Welcome to the 13th meeting of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 1st, the committee will resume its study of intimate partner and domestic violence in Canada. Per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10th of 2022, all those attending in person must wear a mask except for members who are at their place during proceedings. Pour garantir le bon déroulement.
To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, I would like to pass on some instructions to witnesses and members. Before you speak, please wait for me to call your name. If you are participating via video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your microphone. Please mute yourselves when not speaking. Regarding interpretation, for those who are on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen between floor, English, or French. For those who are in the room, you can use the earpiece and choose the desired channel. I would like to remind you that all comments from members and witnesses must be addressed through the chair.
Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to provide this trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to violence and assault. This may be triggering to viewers with similar experiences. If you feel distressed or if you need help, please advise the clerk. I now want to welcome our first guest to today's panel. On our first panel, as an individual, we have Genevieve Lessard, a professor with Laval University. From the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, Reka Gadia, manager, Family Services Department, and the Centre Femme de Bellechasse, Marjolaine Montminy, director. We will be beginning with opening rounds. You will each be provided with 5 minutes for your opening round. What I'll start doing is a swirling of the pen, asking you to wrap it up. And if you could take about 10 to 15 seconds just to put in your last words, that'd be fantastic. I'm now going to turn the floor over to Genevieve Lessard for your opening 5 minutes. Genevieve, you have the floor.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup pour.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Geneviève Lessard, professor at Laval University and director of RAVE, which is one of the 5 member centers of the Canadian Alliance of Gender-Based Violence Research Centers. On December 6, 1989, a man murdered 14 young women at the École Polytechnique of Montreal. This tragic event led to a mobilization of the Canadian government to fund research infrastructure on violence against women. This is how our Canadian Alliance was created, and it is still active 30 years later with several pan-Canadian projects supported by the Alliance and in which RAVE researchers are actively involved. Previously, RAVE was called the CRI-VIFF CREVIF. We changed the name in 2020 with the obtaining of a new infrastructure grant that allows us to broaden the scientific programming to also study structural violence in addition to violence against women and children, always with our same mission of partnership and interdisciplinary research. The RIVE includes about 30 regular researchers from Quebec universities, 40 national and international collaborators, and many students and practice partners. We have 2 teams funded by the FRQSC, which is a research fund from Quebec, one on domestic violence, which I direct, and the other on structural violence and social justice, directed by my colleague Catherine Rossi. You have probably noticed, as I and many other experts in the field have, that intimate family and structural violence, FSV, has increased with the pandemic. We also believe that the post-pandemic period will generate increased violence and people who have tolerated violence or more endured severe violence may still experience it. This is why the choice to accentuate the investment in research on this violence and on the social responses to it appears very strategic. Researchers specialized in this field must be able to continue to support practice partners, but also policymakers like you who want to be a part of the solution to improve prevention and care for those affected. These efforts will significantly decrease the enormous social costs. So we're talking about $6 billion a year in Canada to help victims of domestic violence. And that's not data from the pandemic, that's from before the pandemic, so it's even more costly now. So in the past 2 years, DV practice settings have faced a dual challenge of responding to the increased demand for help and also having to rapidly transform their services to fit the pandemic context. But the history of research in our field over the past 30 years has clearly demonstrated that we have what it takes to respond to this kind of challenge. And this is why I salute your beautiful initiative of this national study aimed at reflecting in depth on what can be done to move forward together towards more egalitarian social relationships and social justice. Beyond my duties as director and my own research projects, and my team, so we focus on forms of violence, violence prevention with youth. I have just completed research with young adults exposed to violence against women in childhood or adolescence. And I find it distressing that almost none of them had access to specialized help as children and adolescents. They suffer when they're young, and they're forced to seek help for themselves when they're adults. And they have to try very hard to get services that are adapted to their needs as young adults. We also know that they have fewer resources in their natural network than the majority of other young adults who have not experienced domestic violence. In a lot of cases, they want to flee if their parents are still together. So these are big challenges, and we wanted to create a practical tool that is available online. We extracted the results when an adult is around a child or an adolescent in the case of domestic violence. And we have different sections in on the website, so my time is up.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I have the buzzer. I gave you a few extra seconds there and I put the buzzer on again. So thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over to the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. Rekha, you have the floor. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members for inviting Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. I'll refer as FEWO. It is a privilege to be here today to share and gain further insights on this issue. We are very thankful for all the work that is being done by this committee to end intimate partner violence in Canada. I'm calling from Calgary, Alberta, located at the traditional territories of the Peoples of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. At FEWO, we work with immigrant and refugee families as our target population, and in our 40 years of experience working in this area, we believe that there is a huge need to increase accessibility, reduce social isolation and barriers to accessing community services for immigrant women, men, and their families living in family, domestic, intimate partner violence situations. Intimate partner violence is growing at an alarming pace, and a pandemic only brought a further huge spike globally. And at FEWO, we saw a 57% increase in the clients that we served, and the immigrant women that we serve are at higher risk due to language and cultural barriers, poverty, and lack of information on available resources. In our experience, violence occurs among immigrant families due to the stressors related to overcoming the barriers related to settlement, integration, inability to meet the basic needs, unique personal circumstances, vulnerabilities, and the barriers related to pre-migration, migration, and resettlement. Cultural barriers, stigmas, and role reversals only intensify their abuse experience. This is further deepened when there is pre-existing trauma in case of refugees, for example, who come with adverse experiences, war zones, have large families, maybe having disabilities, low to zero literacy in their own languages, huge cultural barriers, stigma, and intimate partner violence programs and services that we offer and also anywhere should aim to positively impact immigrant families by addressing these grassroots issues, changing the way they perceive and handle stress, gender equality, equity, family conflict, etc., as they are only able to then cope with all these barriers. And the community education and awareness is also extremely important to reach out to the victims, perpetrators, and family members. Our experience shows that the need to extend the services beyond women and to encompass men and boys and the community at large is critical. Very often, immigrant men come from the cultures of toxic masculinity with defined gender roles and cultural norms that do not expect them to be a part and parcel of the daily routines and upbringings and supporting their partners. They find it difficult to understand this expectation. We have learned that the real empowerment for women and children will truly happen when we engage men and boys. This learning became much more concrete with our engagement with University of Calgary Research with Shift and Engaging Men in Violence Prevention Collaborative. We believe that working with men and boys for violence prevention will only enhance our collective learnings, better understand men's needs and issues and their level of lack of awareness. And this will then enable us to offer concrete support for the women and children, holistic services for the entire family, and address the grassroots factors that lead to perpetuation of the violence and abuse. At FEWO, we have identified some of the best and promising practices to improve supports and protection for women and girls living in unsafe environments. And this includes reaching out to them where they are. They naturally go out for their daily tasks, or they congregate naturally, like community centers, clinics, English classes, workplaces. Offering information in a culturally sensitive way and in their first language is critical regarding the issue itself, education, awareness, be it tools or resources, everything. Engaging boys and girls early on in schools through developing and offering gender-based violence prevention curriculum that we have developed and are offering in some schools, healthy relationship-focused education for adults and youth, engaging ethnic communities and faith-based leaders in education and awareness to help reduce the stigma and talk about the healthy gender norms, healthy masculinities, healthy relationships, and cross-culture parenting, eventually connecting the women and girls with them for accessing cultural supports from within the community, because they trust them. Connecting women and girls with the financial resources to make them less or not depending on the partner. Having projects like Find Me a Home that we have at FEWO to offer emergency transitional housing and crisis support so that they can leave the abusive situation. And this includes partnering with hotels and motels that we consider safe. Having a strong understanding of various intersectionalities like health sector, disability, and employment with intimate partner violence to further address the factors that truly limit the women and girls from leaving the abusive situation and create then customized support services and resources to meet their unique needs. Having a cross-sector and cross-systems coordinated response model is extremely important and efficient. Like we have an example in Calgary Police Services community-based equally safe model that FEWO is also a formal partner of. Having a collective impact model-based initiative such as Calgary Domestic Violence Collective, Impact, Alberta Violence Prevention Framework. So those are some of the examples of cross-system sector collaboration that we have. I will leave at the end with some of the recommendations that we have come up with. We just wrapped up a wage-funded research project called Employment Security Alliance. And our recommendations are that the workplaces should have the culturally sensitive support.
Sorry, I forgot to turn off. We were over time there. What we can do is documents that you can to be sent to our committee. That'd be fantastic. But what I need to do is turn over to our next witness right now. Sorry, I apologize for that. Sometimes it's difficult without your mic. I'm just pushing it. Sorry, this is where I have to turn back to my speaker's notes because I was following you along here. Here we go. And I'm going to turn it over for the next 5 minutes. I'm sorry about that. Our next 5 minutes to Marjolaine from the Centre Femme de Bellechasse. You have the floor, 5 minutes.
Okay, merci.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. I'm Marjolaine Montminy. I've been the director of the Centre Femme de Bellechasse since its creation in 2000. The RCM of Bellechasse is a vast rural territory located south of Quebec City. It is composed of 20 municipalities and has no town. It is a beautiful agricultural and industrial region with businesses and some local services. There is a medical service and a CLSC on the territory, but a certain precariousness is still omnipresent. Public transit is small scale and does not meet all the needs of the community. The profitability of such transportation is difficult to achieve and distances are long. A saving grace, the community service of volunteer transport, but it is very difficult to maintain today. Removing the elderly from this system to protect them from COVID has weakened the most important belt of this system that works thanks to volunteers. There is no longer a cab service in the entire region. An office of the Sûreté du Québec is located in the center of the territory, so in the event of a call for help, a patrol car can take up to 25 minutes to reach the scene of a call. The police and ambulance service may require more time to respond. And same for legal aid services. Community agencies like ours usually work daytime hours, and oftentimes episodes of intimate violence happen in the evening and in evenings and on weekends. We have noticed that there is not enough affordable housing. People need to travel far to have access. A young family, for example, looking for housing to get out of a violent situation will have a hard time finding housing. Often, people will stay around their families, and it'll be easier for the victim to be isolated. Internet and cellular coverage is not equal everywhere. The exorbitant cost of internet bills forces many low-income residents to go without internet, and this is considered to be an essential tool. Imagine the internet bill on a social assistance income. It's a big chunk of the budget. In rural areas, developing a protection scenario with a woman living in a row becomes difficult because the distance between households is great. Women with disabilities and older women will be more vulnerable because of their close dependence on their caregivers. If they are in an abusive environment, they may take much longer to break the silence. They do not want to lose the only help they have access to. When an episode of violence occurs, we tend to focus on the victim and the importance of preserving family ties, whereas it is demonstrated that the intervention should focus first on the safety of the victim and the accountability of the aggressor in front of his choices. Let's never forget that domestic violence is about taking control and not losing control. In the judicial process, there is little interest in the history of the violence. The main focus is on the event that triggers the process. However, the history of domestic violence can have a major impact on the abuser's risk of reoffending. The media plays a big role in whether or not violence is tolerated. The women's movement has strongly insisted on changing the wording used in situations of severe domestic violence. Family drama and crime of passion have nothing to do with the reality of domestic violence. There is no passion in establishing total control over the person you claim to love. The women's movement has lobbied hard to introduce a difference between the words homicide and femicide. By introducing this new word, we are analyzing a completely different thing. When we were examining the murder of women through homicide, the public didn't realize the magnitude of domestic violence in our lives. We minimized the impact of the language and the media. Doctors in the medical world must be trained to develop a better attention to the different symptoms of domestic violence. Women must feel safe in a doctor's office, and they have to be able to express themselves and be by themselves. Too often, targeted treatment is aimed at treating the immediate symptoms and not the actual cause of what brings her to the doctor. By medicating only the apparent symptoms, we unfortunately increase the tolerance to the violence she's experiencing, and often preventing her from taking real steps to get out of this unhealthy environment. If this violence against a spouse was directed towards a complete stranger, would we be so tolerant? I highly doubt it. I see that my time is running out, so in Quebec, we have the Rebuilding Trust report, which is created without partisanship, and I think that's how we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. We're now going to start off over with our round of questions. We're going to start with each person getting the first 6 minutes. We'll be starting off with Shelby Cramp. Shelby, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to Genevieve, Rekha, and Marjolaine or Madeline? Marjolaine, I believe. There's no question that over the course of the study the last several weeks, we've been reflecting a tremendous amount in depth on what we can do moving forward. Ideally, we as a committee want to be part of the solution, and we can recognize that there's many challenges when it comes to victims of domestic violence and how we end intimate partner violence. My question would be, I'll start with Genevieve, is how do you see the government stepping up? What is the number one priority, your role that you see this committee moving forward with?
Merci pour votre question.
Thank you for your question. I had not been able to finish my speech with my recommendations. Can you hear me? So I had 2 recommendations that are important, and they tie into my speech. So it would be to support more prevention by funding more proactive projects to reach young people. In order to do so, we need a broad approach to violence, which allows us to look at violence that is considered less serious or not yet clearly coercive, which also doesn't have obvious signs of danger. But we need to examine these situations before the behavior becomes dangerous and coercive. So we need to focus on prevention.
So because of time, I'm going to get another question in. So just a few comments. I'm suggesting that this is disturbing and comforting at the same time. Disturbing that we have to talk this long about it, and there's so many groups that have so many horrific stories to share. But it's comforting at the same time that we have this many advocacy groups that are doing what you are doing. So thank you to all of you. Perhaps I'll ask Rekha or Marjolaine to see if you can address any specific measures that this particular government needs to do to best address this. So some of you have come up with some recommendations, but could either Rekha or Marjolaine provide the committee with any specific measures to help address how we move forward? Because a lot of us, we're talking, there's a lot of advocacy, but we need to get, well, we need to move, we need action.
Sure, I can start off with one of the recommendations. Sorry, I think I need to turn my interpretation off. So one of the recommendations, that solid recommendation, is, of course, the funding is a no-brainer for the prevention-based and intervention-based, but there needs to be in education, like the workplaces needs to have, for engaging men, they need to have the culturally sensitive or trauma-informed trainings to be happening about the gender-based violence issue itself, and then how to mitigate that and how they can play a role, and also offering the similar curriculum in the school. So that is one solid thing. And to provide that employment security so that women are able to truly leave the situation is the employment and financial security. And for that, we would like to also have customized bridging programs and policy changes even at the workplaces when the women have to deal with, they're going through all the violence issues and they want to leave, or even if they have left the situation, but then they have children are typically with the moms. So then that is where, they have to take care of the childcare, the EPO, they have the court dates and whatnot. So the employers need to have that understanding. So having the policies around supporting the women at workplaces, that is one of the solid recommendations I can really give off the bat.
Thank you. Marjolaine, can you reflect on any specific in-depth measures that you would suggest moving forward?
Yes. We'll have to look at all of the legislation and judgments made on sexual violence and domestic violence. We need to hold people accountable for their actions. Currently, we see women who are seen as witnesses of their own violence, and when they go to court, it's so difficult for them. They need to have support from the beginning to the end of the judicial process, because it's very difficult for a woman to share her story multiple times. So she needs support, and media as well in what they say. There needs to be raised awareness on domestic violence, to not make it seem fictional. They need to use the real words. And we saw the change by using femicide instead of homicide in the past few years. Also, education. We need to educate our young men on power, the notion of power. That they need to stop thinking that they have to have power over their partner. That's not love. That's not what it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much, and I'm just going to unmute again. We're now going to pass the next 6 minutes over to Jenna Suds. Jenna, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us today. I think I will start with Geneviève. You had mentioned, you had spoke a little bit about the impact of intimate partner violence when children are present. So I'm wondering if you can share with us, from some of the research that you have done, what some of the benefits are of early intervention as far as when kids are concerned.
Oui, merci pour la question. Les avantages, ce serait...
Thank you for the question. For the advantages, it would allow children to understand more clearly what they're going through. They can know that there is help for them somewhere, even though I did mention that having access to help can be difficult, but there are a lot of benefits to special services like that. When children can talk about what's happening, they can see the difference between the violent behavior and the person, that it's unacceptable, that it's not something that happens in all families, then it helps, because research has shown for the past 30 years the impact of all of this. We know that it is as damaging to witness this violence as it is to going through it. It's important to look at the needs of children. That's why I've worked with young adults, and other research has shown the consequences that stay beyond the age of 18, the impact of domestic violence. So offering services more proactively, reaching children in schools. And the other witnesses talked about support and education, and it's important for young people. In a schoolroom, it's about 4 to 6 children who are exposed to domestic violence. So targeting a school could be a good idea for proactive services.
Thank you so much for that. You had said something that really caught me, which prompted that, which was you said that often children want to flee if their parents are still together and they're witnessing domestic violence. And I think your comments are well noted in the impact we can have if we can get into schools, for example, and have that education at an early age. My next question will be for Rika. Rika, I noted, you didn't speak too much about this today, but I noted on your website that your organization offers employment services for women with formal education who might not necessarily have had access to education in the past. And I'm hoping that you can speak a bit about the impact of having access to that formal education.
Mm-hmm.
So that is extremely crucial because even when immigrant families arrive to a new country, typically it's the women who are left behind because they have to take care of the children. So we really take pride in focusing on and prioritizing that. And many immigrant women, they have different levels of literacy and sometimes no literacy. So we have first decided to develop the customized programs for different levels of literacy and then different fields of education, and some even just no cooking. So we even have customized modules for those kind of areas where they can still leverage on the skills that they have. And the other important piece is if they have at least their own language, so we are able to provide training to further formalize their training in their own language, so they can be community interpreters, certified community interpreters as well, and then they can have independence and empowerment, and they can earn money as a freelancer as well. So those are some of the small examples, but then we have customized programs for different levels of literacy for women, and particularly when we know that they have family conflict or domestic violence situation going on. So we at SEWO have 50 plus programs, and my portfolio particularly includes the domestic violence counseling and that kind of stuff. So making sure that they are all connected, and in any programs we do the family violence screening as well, so that way they are immediately able to be connected. And particularly there are the programs, the way they are designed, unfortunately they have to be driven by the funder mandate and be completed by a certain time period, right? So that is why one of the recommendations we wanted to have strongly that there should be customized program that could run for a longer period. If a program is running for 6 months, so this program can run for 1 year, so that the women who are going through or they're in the process of fleeing abusive situation, or they may have just fled the situation, so they do have that customized time and support. So while they're healing themselves, they are also gaining that employment security. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, fabulous. I don't think I have much time left, but just quickly, I also noted that I believe you have a program to offer homework support for kids.
Yes.
Can you speak? We have
Absolutely.
20 seconds left briefly to that and the importance or impact of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the homework.
Ms. Gadia, if you could just raise your mic just a little bit more to your nose, just for the interpreters, great. We'll continue with that 20 seconds left, okay?
Perfect, thank you. So the after school homework club is basically, and we have also the homework helpline. So anyone who is in the school and they're already struggling because of the integration, they are struggling and they're staying behind, or they are ESL, ELL. So we make sure that we connect to those kids and provide that homework support. We have our staff and we have our volunteers who are able to, again, customize, and they also offer the language support if they are newcomers and they're having the language issues. So they can provide that additional academic support, so that way they are not falling behind. And in line with that, we also offer gender violence curriculum in some of the schools.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to turn it over for the next 6 minutes to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank our 3 witnesses for being with us today to talk about this important matter of intimate partner violence. Thank you, Ms. Lessard, Ms. Gadia, and Ms. Momini. What you have to say is very relevant for our study. I would like to ask my first question to Ms. Lessard. You talked about 2 recommendations that you wanted to make 2 priorities for the federal government. In one of your recommendations, you said we could examine Quebec's concerted efforts. Could you tell us what that concerted model is and how it could be useful for us for our study? Answer. Thank you for the question. We are a research center, as I mentioned earlier, so our contribution will be on that level and not to direct services to the public. But I believe that a collaboration is important for social change. In Quebec, there's a program called the Concerted Program Against Domestic Violence. So it's from the Research Fund in Quebec and the Health and Social Services Department, and it's attached to the government's plan against domestic violence. And how it works is that the government, depending on the action priorities, so it's something that the federal government could examine. So this could allow the government to have funds for different priorities. There could be 2 or 3 programs, and they have to be in partnership with organizations and universities. And if there was a Canadian alliance, well, we would definitely support you and assist you with the call for projects on domestic violence. That way, there could be relevant projects that could respond to the needs of the federal government. So you could look to the Quebec model if the federal government wanted a role in research on violence. So it's important to have different stakeholders looking at this in a concerted manner. There are police officers and other members of the judicial system who will interpret cases as a disagreement between a couple because there wasn't necessarily a criminal act, and so the process will stop there, even though there is a sign of coercive violence, and usually that could be a precursor of more physical violence. So could we start by criminalizing coercive control, and could we also offer training on legislative tools and give police officers and other members of the judicial body tools to better understand the issue, as you mentioned in your opening statement? Answer: yes. We can't respond to this complex issue with a simple response. Yes, changing the legislation gives tools, but if that's all we do and we don't support our frontline workers, well, sometimes the tools can be misused. I also work a lot on support services, and with the report on rebuilding trust, there were crisis centers that were created in Quebec, and this is a part of the way to prevent femicides. So you can see how bringing in other experts can make things broader, and by putting everything together, well, we end up having an intervention that is more safe for victims, and they have support, and it takes into account all of their needs. We also need to work on the perpetrators of violence as well, going beyond just legal matters. They need support, because if they don't get support for their coercive control, then even after they're released, for example, they might not change. So we need to work on the psychosocial level as well as the legal level. I know I don't have a lot of time left, so I will give the floor back to Ms. Larouche if she has other questions. When we're talking about rebuilding trust, perhaps you can say a bit more in Granby, and in my writing, it'll be one of the pilot areas for the special tribunal, and perhaps Canada could examine that victims of domestic violence are not to be treated like other victims necessarily. It has its own specificities. Answer: for the creation of a new measure, for example, the special tribunal in Quebec, this is something new. So it's important as researchers to be able to support the process. So we will work in collaboration with these measures, and we'll be able to document what's happening and to see if it's helping us to meet the goals, the expected goals. That could be our contribution in the research.
Thank you very much. We're now going to pass it over. Are you okay? Thank you very much. We're now going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses today for your testimony. My first question is for Madame Lessard. I know that you spoke about coercive control, and I know that we often kind of banter back and forth, certainly in this study about, punishment versus kind of rehabilitation for people that have exhibited violent behaviors. So I'm of the mind that, certainly people need to be held responsible for behavior, but certainly penitentiaries that are very antisocial and violent institutions, I feel that they're probably not the best places to assist people that have violent behaviors. And that, in fact, we know that there's very high recidivism rates. I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts about that.
Le contrôle coercitif, c'est...
Coercive control is one of the most dangerous forms of violence. It can be explosive. So, in facing that kind of dynamic, well, we need even more controlling and safe measures. For example, the e-bracelet. Measures like that. When we're concerned for someone's life, and we also need to examine the suicidal ideation as well of the perpetrator. Sometimes they will consider killing someone and then killing themselves. So with coercive control, there needs to be a legal tool to punish that person. That's good. But if that's the only thing, well, the person's not going to stay in prison for life. And in a lot of cases of coercive control, those people will be antisocial with their personal relationships and sometimes at work, but that coercive control is put on their partner. So, and that behavior can change, and that's why rehabilitation is important. It's to ensure the safety in the medium and long term of the partner and children. Sometimes there will be a child, and the victim will stay in contact with the partner because of the child.
Limited time. I really appreciate that response, because I absolutely, respect the dangers, how dangerous coercive control is, and that it needs to be a balanced approach. It's hard to teach pro-social behaviors in an anti-social environment. I think that's what my concern is. I also was taken by the fact you talked about how mental health supports for individuals stops at 18, and this is true. Like, when you be prior to 18, if you're having difficulties, a lot of supports often can be provided, for example, through schools. They'll provide kids with supports, and then you turn 18, all the supports stop, and there doesn't seem to be a focus on funding proper mental health care for people dealing with complex mental health and trauma, including complex mental health and trauma that comes out of witnessing family violence. Can you speak to the importance of targeted funding and programs for people recovering from trauma related to family violence?
Je pense que c'est un gros trou.
I think that it's a black hole of services for young adults. They need to pay for specialized services, and as I mentioned earlier, they have fewer resources because they don't have the same networks. They don't have a family network supporting them financially. I don't want to generalize. Of course, some do have that financial support, but it's important to develop that further. And we could offer support in the workplace where young people are. There are sectors where we are mostly employing young people in restaurants and hotels, for example. If there were programs for employee assistance for employees that are mostly young people that could respond to a need. And I think that the lists would be quite full quite quickly. Two of my students created an organization in Quebec City. It's called Viva Jeunesse, and it's devoted to young people who went through domestic violence. So perhaps new organizations like that could be created.
Privilege of visiting Viva Jeunesse the other weekend. It was pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing sport.
Before you, Leah.
Oh no!
Before you get another question, your time is done.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Okay.
Okay, we'll get you back for your. So what we're going to do, we only have about 12 minutes left for the panel. I'm going to divide the time, 4 minutes for CPC and Liberals and 2 minutes for NDP, or I'm sorry, yes, NDP and Bloc. So I'm going to pass the floor over now to Dominique. Dominique, you have 4 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I find it a little frustrating because I had a lot of questions for Ms. Geneviève Lessard, and I think that we could have talked even more about youth. Perhaps, Ms. Geneviève, we can try to follow up with you and you can share initiatives that work with young people, because we are very interested in relationships, in teenage relationships. I'm going to call Marjolaine by her first name because I've known her for 30 years. So hello, Marjolaine. Thank you for being here. So the rural area, Bellechasse, I know it well, but it's something that we can see elsewhere in rural Canada. So we have the same realities, being far away, frontline services that are not very present, transportation services that are just about non-existent. It has to cover a large area with few people. But that said, you raised the potential for solutions. What initiatives could we easily develop and implement that could be reproduced in rural Canada and throughout Canada? Firstly, having access to internet for a reasonable amount would be a start. With the pandemic, we all went on Zoom, but when you don't have $55 a month to pay for Zoom and your internet connection, well, it's hard to reach women. They're far away from us. And often when you're coming out of a domestic violence relationship, so after the relationship, it's often women's centers who go get those women, and we reach those women, and that's how we've reached clients, through internet. And I've heard many times women tell me that they didn't have enough money for internet. So we sent them towards organizations where they could have access to internet, and that's how we kind of got around things. But we would need unlimited internet for, at maximum, $20 a month, because a social assistance check, and if you remove $55 for internet, that's a lot of money. And if they have a phone, well, and it has limited minutes, then they don't have enough minutes to reach people. And we also need to hold perpetrators accountable. And in the Rebuilding Trust report, there are about 120 recommendations. Marjolaine, earlier, Geneviève was talking about Rebuilding Trust, the report, and she was talking about these crisis cells. And how do you create those cells and how could they be useful? Yes, we are currently implementing them. there was an unfortunate situation with Vicky Langlois, who went through something horrible. When I asked Vicky what I could have done as a women's center, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional, she said, create crisis cells. That's what we need. And we are working on it now. We received the funding, and we're trying to implement it throughout Canada. And that'll be important. E-bracelets will be great when internet works, because you need to have a network connection. You need to have a phone to find out if the person is around your house. So if I'm in a region where internet is not present, the e-bracelet's not going to work. So internet is important. And there are
Marjolaine, I'm sorry, I do have to cut you off. I know that you've got such great expertise in this, and so I apologize, but we do have others to ask questions. I'm just going to pass it over for the next 4 minutes to Emanuela. Emanuela, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Et un grand merci à nos
Thank you to our witnesses for being here today and responding to our questions. My first question is for Ms. Lessard. You talked a lot about young women who are experiencing violence, and your research focuses on that or has focused on that recently. So I would like to know, is there a disparity between women in those kinds of situations and women with a post-secondary education? Because you talked about this program and having it in the workplace, but you didn't talk about cégep or university. Could you talk about that, please? Answer. Yes, thank you for the question. I won't be able to answer all of it because my research didn't focus on women who were victims of domestic violence, but rather children who were exposed to it in childhood or adolescence. And we worked with university students as well. We reached out to people with Kijiji and Facebook and organizations that worked with young people, but we received a lot of responses from cégep and universities. So yes, it would be important, as you mentioned, to include cégeps, colleges, and universities in our support measures. There are certain programs in the university area, so it's support services for students, but they are completely overrun. The list for support is so long, and that's not only for domestic violence, that's for any issue. I'm sorry for cutting you off. I don't have a lot of time. You also talked about the pandemic and how it showed us the importance of finding innovation. Could you give us some details on how the government could support that type of project? Answer. I think that this pandemic will transform the way things are done. For example, the work that Ms. Momini in her field, having services online can be very helpful for people who don't have access to transportation or who have disabilities. I think we'll have to see the transformation of services and how they are reorganized during and especially after the pandemic. It'll be important to see what's effective, what type of therapy is available. I know someone who offers therapy online for trauma for victims of sexual and domestic violence, and her research is quite positive on the effectiveness of that treatment. So these are ways of doing things that could be developed further, and how we could help young people, especially young people who are much better with technology than we are. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the witnesses.
Thanks so much, Emanuela. We're now going to turn it over for 2 minutes to Adrienne. Adrienne, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we're trying to find possible paths, to find solutions to violence against women and domestic violence. You talked about different treatments and thinking outside the box, but could we also focus on prevention? I think there are other initiatives that inspire you, telephone lines, there are other models that could work on prevention and could prevent a situation from devolving. Answer. I think that we need to change our language because victims of domestic violence, well, it will take time and it will take a fair amount of violence, unfortunately, for her to say that she is a victim of domestic violence. She'll start by saying that things aren't going very well with her partner. She'll say that she's tried everything. So perhaps we could take a step back for those who work in the field and see how we can reach those women with other prevention strategies. So to reach women before they're afraid for their lives. And there are services available for women. There are perhaps other countries or other measures that could be useful for prevention, because when we're talking about coercive control, Professor Simon Lapierre said that it needs to be seen as behavior that uses different strategies to limit a victim's freedom. Are there any models in Quebec, for example, that could inspire us?
Already over that 2-minute spot. I'm going to ask perhaps Madame Lessard, you could send some information to us, and Ms. Montagny, that would be fantastic. I'm now going to turn it over to Leah Gazan for her final 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. My last question is for Madame Cese. You know, I know in my community there's a real gaps in support systems for newcomer women experiencing intimate partner violence. I was wondering if you could identify some of the gaps and how these gaps could be better addressed to ensure there's culturally responses and adequate supports, especially with some of the factors you identified in your testimony.
Sorry, that was for me, right? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, no, definitely. One of the key things that we have identified is the culturally sensitive support and in first language. So that is very critical. And working with the systems, like we have taken initiatives like doing the cultural competency or diversity training with the health system. We are working hand in hand with the formal partnership with the Calgary Police. And I think that is one of my solid recommendations, that each city should have this kind of model, which is the equally safe model, where we have the police, we have an indigenous people serving organization, immigrant serving organization, a senior shelter, and we have another shelter. So, you know, we're all working together, sharing resources. We offer culturally sensitive training or cultural competency training to the police, and we are working right with them from the stage of triage to really make sure that they are interpreting the cultural nuances right from the get-go, instead of going through their checklist, rather than working with us. And we also are able to then in that way break the trust issue that a lot of immigrant families have with the police. So that is one of the key things that we have been offering, the diversity and cultural competency trainings, and of course the service.
Sorry, just because I have
Leah,
oh no.
Leah,
okay.
Your limited time has run out.
Okay,
I'm so sorry. I know
Sorry.
that there's been great information come to us today. So I know that there has been some requests. So for anyone who would like to send additional information as requested today, I just remind you to send it to the clerk. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for your excellent testimony today. I'm going to suspend the meeting and we'll be back probably in about 30 seconds. We just need to get the new members online. And I'd like to thank the witnesses, and you may leave the meeting now. Thank you. order. And I'd really like to welcome the second panel for today's discussion on intimate partner violence. We have 4 groups of panelists today, so we're going to have our time quite tight, but we're going to work together and get through this. So à titre personnel, Peter Jaffe.
As an individual, Peter Jaffe, Professor Emeritus, Western University, Assembly of First Nations, Deputy Grand Chief Anne Betty Ashnipiskum, Nishnawbe Aski Nation, and Julie McGregor, Director, Justice. L'AJT Inc. and La Jonction pour Elle Inc. Chantal Tanguay, Director, and Sylvie Bernatchez, Director.
And the Peel Regional Police, we have Shalina Jashani, the Directrice, Prana Riet,
Director, Strategic Partnerships and Collaboration,
and Lisa Hewitson, Inspectrice,
Inspector, Crimes Against Persons.
Regional Police as well. So what I would like to do is start off our first 6 minutes and pass the floor over to Professor Peter Jaffe. Peter, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my neighbor in Thames Valley, and members of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. I want to focus on the harm of living with domestic violence for children. They often face death, trauma, or a lifetime of emotional problems. Sadly, the risk of harm to children is often overlooked. My colleague Myrna Dawson at the University of Guelph and I have been involved in a national study of domestic homicide with the support of 12 other universities, scholars, and over 60 community partners from coast to coast to coast in Canada. One finding I wanted to highlight is that in the last 10 years, there have been 815 domestic homicide victims in Canada. Women are the victims in over 80% of the cases. Men are the perpetrator in 86% of the cases. Domestic violence is a gender-based crime, including the murder of children as an act of revenge for women trying to end an abusive relationship. Children are killed in the context of domestic violence, from our research, in 1 in 9 cases. Even the children who survive, they still suffer in the most profound ways. It's estimated that over 800 children have lost both parents during this research period of time we described, either to a murder-suicide or their mother killed and their father incarcerated. 400 children were estimated to have witnessed the homicide or the aftermath of the homicide in terms of the crime scene and police emergency response. When a child or a parent is killed, it's rarely out of the blue. Often there are multiple warning signs known to friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers. These warning signs or risk factors may also be seen by the police, social services, mental health professionals, lawyers, and judges. These homicides are predictable, preventable. From our Ontario research, over 70% of these cases have 7 or more risk factors known prior to the homicide. A recent separation, a history of domestic violence, depression and suicidal ideation in the perpetrator, stalking, escalation of violence, strangulation, and threats to harm, and a victim's intuitive sense of fear. One death is one too many. Canadians need to work together to prevent every domestic homicide. What can we do better? One area I want to focus on is the family court and the need for major reforms to support victims expressing concern about their safety and the safety of their children. The good news is that there has been a major breakthrough in Canada with amendments to the Divorce Act that now recognize all forms of family violence as a factor that judges need to consider as part of determining children's best interest. The Department of Justice has done a lot to support these changes, including producing an excellent toolkit for lawyers to prepare them to better understand family violence and increase sensitivity to representing these parents. The legislative reform must be matched by court reform. If we change the laws but fail to update the process, we may not get the real change that victims and their children need. I would hope that the Minister of Justice, working together with his provincial and territorial counterparts, as well as the Chief Justices, can implement some immediate measures, such as, number 1, mandating judicial education programs on family violence to ensure that every judge hearing family law matters has specialized knowledge on the dynamics of family violence and the impact of family violence on children and victim safety. Ensuring that cases are triaged at the outset and assigned to one judge rather than have the case handled by multiple judges who may overlook growing risk factors intimate partner violence. I hear these stories repeatedly across the country of parents who appear before multiple judges with multiple opinions without any kind of focused approach to family violence. We also need a court process that doesn't allow for litigation abuse, in which coercive control in the marriage is now being played out through the family court to drain the victim financially and emotionally. Very few judges recognize these cases and put an end to this abuse happening right in front of them. We have many thoughtful, sensitive, and brilliant judges across the country, but every family violence victim deserves one of these judges and should not have to depend on fate or good luck to find this judge's courtroom. There's no room for error in family violence cases. Judges are making life and death decisions, often with limited information, and litigants who can't afford proper representation. Access to justice is not just a day in court for a victim of family violence. It's a day with judges and court-related professionals that are educated and well-informed about these issues. I'll leave my comments there, but I've provided the committee with other material, and hopefully during question period, I will refer to my other major recommendation is on universal prevention programs built into every school across the country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll be very interested in hearing on that last one piece for sure. I'm now going to pass it over to the Safe Center of Peel and Peel Regional Police. I will let you decide who was going first on this, but Shalina or Lisa, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for giving me the opportunity to appear as a witness to this very important standing committee. My name is Shalina Jashani, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Collaboration. I oversee the Safe Center of Peel, which is located in the region of Peel in Ontario. I'm privileged to be here representing 16 partner organizations and accompanied by my partner, Peel Regional Police, who will share the time with me today. I'm not here to share with you the outrageous statistics that we already know regarding the prevalence of IPV in our country. What I want to share with you today is an innovative, evidence-based best practice model of how a community can work together to respond and provide a safety net for victims of IPV. The Safe Center of Peel is a collaboration of 16 community partners who are providing an integrated, coordinated, and wraparound service delivery model for victims of IPV. And we have been in operation for over a decade. In 2008, our community partners began discussions that we needed to respond to IPV in our community differently. We couldn't continue to work in silos, duplicate services, and watch while vulnerable women tried to navigate systems that we had created. This began our journey of consulting with frontline service providers and survivors to understand their experiences, gaps, and hopes for a responsive service system. We consistently heard that victims were being told to repeat their stories over and over. Victims were told they couldn't bring their children with them to these different services, and they were left trying to navigate complex systems and sectors. Many of these victims were also managing multiple barriers, such as language needs, immigration, low to no finances, young children, and virtually no support system. We know the needs of victims and their children are vast, and the system is just too hard and complicated to navigate. We then looked elsewhere to see what other innovative models existed, and we came across the Family Justice Center model that has been recognized as best practice by the U.S. Department of Justice and has established centers across the US and 25 countries. The Safe Center of Peel, like the Family Justice Center models, work on creating a service response that is cross-sectorial. We recognize that collaboration and integration among community services, justice, legal, health, and education are vital in being responsive to victims of IPV. Today, we share with you the opportunity to highlight the Safe Center of Peel as a best practice model that can be showcased as a national model of practice. We are all aware that we have a problem in our country with the issue of IPV. its impacts on our children and our communities. When we ask victims to go from place to place, repeat their stories over and over again, and don't have a safe space for the children, and expect them to lead integration and connection between sectors, this is virtually impossible. We need to do something different across our country so we can keep women and children safe. IPV is a complex issue, but the service delivery doesn't need to be. We urge you to consider the Safe Center as a national best practice model that can be implemented across the country. The development and implementation of these models need to be adequately funded to create centers and communities that are reflective of the needs of these communities. Part of our integration at the Safe Center has been to establish our integrated work with our justice partner, Peel Regional Police. And I would like to ask Inspector Hughson to provide an overview of this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalina. I'd like to thank the committee and the Safe Center Peel for including Peel Regional Police in this deputation. As she said, my name is Inspector Lisa Hewison, and I lead one of the largest intimate partner violence units in Canada. The communities we serve are not immune to intimate partner and domestic violence. Consistently, our #1 call for service is for intimate partner disputes, and in 2020, it accounted for 30% of our homicides. In 2021, we responded to over 16,000 incidents for intimate partner violence and domestic violence. That's 45 incidents every 2 hours, every day. Also in 2021, we laid 393 strangulation charges where survivors were seconds away from being a femicide. That's over 1 woman being strangled every day in our region. PRP has identified gaps in services and inconsistencies with the judicial system when it comes to IPV, which often leaves survivors experience additional trauma. Many
Lisa?
IPV, yes?
Lisa, I hate to cut you off because I know the information you're providing us a little overwhelming. I'll be honest on some of this stuff, but we do have to get to our other witnesses, and we will ask for all of that additional information to be tabled as well, if possible. I do want to pass the floor over now to the Assemblée des Premières Nations, le grand chef adjoint, Anna Betty Shinitskum, the Nation Nishawabi Eski, and Julie McGregor, Directrice Justice. I will pass the floor over to both of you for 5 minutes. I'll give you the 1 minute warning, meaning we need to start wrapping it up, but you'll have 5 minutes. And Lisa, I'm sure we'll get back to you for some questions. Thank you. You have the floor.
Wache, good afternoon. My name is Anna Betty Echnibaneshkum. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. My name is Anna Betty Echnibaneshkum, and I'm the Deputy Grand Chief of Anishinaabe Nation and the Ontario representative on the Assembly of First Nation Women's Council. I am joining you virtually from Niagara Falls, which is the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. I'm happy to be here today to present on the topic of domestic and intimate partner violence. I am joined by Julie McGregor, who is a Director of Justice at the Assembly of First Nations. First of all, in terms of the work that is done with the AFN Women's Council. The AFN Women's Council is mandated to provide the AFN Executive Committee by affirming the importance of building and strengthening partnerships between men, women, and gender diverse people in all levels of decision making within the AFN as an integrated step in achieving an equitable society. The AFN Women's Council is comprised of 1 or more female leadership position representing each of the 10 regions of each from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and Labrador, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island, and Northwest Territories, and the Yukon Territories. Each region is responsible for identifying the process for the appointment of their regional representatives. The AFN supports the family first priority principle in all the work we do on the MMIW file. We believe that it is important that the MMIW National Action Plan reflects the voices of those who for many years have been advocating for the health and safety of our women. The AFN has a party withstanding to the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And the AFN Women's Council continues to stand to strongly advocate for the implementation of all of the 231 calls for action for justice. Last year, in 2021, the AFN Women's Council carried a national engagement process in all 10 AFN regions for development of the First Nation National Action Plan. The AFN Women's Council believes strongly in listening to survivors and families of what is needed to end violence against First Nation women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse peoples. When Chiefs in Assembly passed Resolution 67-2019, giving the AFN Women's Council the mandate to coordinate our own engagement process with First Nation, the mandate included the directive to ensure that a family's first principle was used. In carrying this out mandate, we kept survivors and families at the heart of the work throughout the engagement processes. In the Ontario region, along with the Chiefs of Ontario, the First Nation Women's Caucus and the AFN Women's Council hosted 26 virtual engagement sessions with families and survivors. These virtual sessions included 10 sessions in Southern Ontario, 10 in Northern Ontario, 6 sessions dedicated to Anishinaabe Nation language groups with translations in Cree, Ojibwe, and Ojibwe. The Northern and Southern Ontario sessions also had multiple sessions dedicated specifically to First Nation youth and First Nations 2S LGBTQ peoples. After the engagement was done, the Chiefs of Ontario First Nations Women's Caucus hosted the MMIW family gathering to build on the momentum in the region and formulate a detailed gender-based violence action plan to strategically support First Nations in Ontario to prevent violence, including human trafficking awareness, prevention initiatives, gender diversity, bias awareness, and men's healing programs.
Deputy Grand Chief, I hate to cut you off, but we've gone quite a bit over time. I know you have such important words, so hopefully we'll either get them in questions or be able to receive additional documentation from you. I'm now going to pass for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to pass it over to Le Jeté Incorporated and La Jonction pour Elle, to Chantal and Sylvie. Thank you for just joining us, Chantal. I will let you two divide the time, but you're given 5 minutes, so I'll just pass the floor over to you now. 5 minutes. So Sylvie, I think you have to go off mute. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Bonjour. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Hello, can you hear me? Perfect. Madam Chair, committee members, hello. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this study on intimate partner violence and domestic violence in Canada. I am Sylvie Bernatchez, director of the shelter La Jonction pour Elle and of the Maison de Deuxième Étape, La Maison Denise Ruel, both located in Lévis. I am accompanied by my colleague, Ms. Chantal Tanguay, Director of the Maison d'Aide et Hébergement La JT, and of the Maison Louise, a second-stage house located in Thetford Mines in Chaudière-Appalaches. We have chosen to talk to you about the experience of women and their children who live in a context of domestic violence, their words, but also their pains. We work with women in a shelter environment 24 hours a day. We share the same space. Bonds are created, exchanges are made. Being several women who have experienced similar events of violence and control allows these women to come out of their isolation. They feel less alone in experiencing these problems. We welcome women and children in a safe place that offers listening, support, and accompaniment. We are therefore able to see the impact of domestic violence on the victims. We talk about the fear, the guilt, the many losses of self-confidence, self-esteem, family, friends, employment, among others. It is necessary to name the losses in health, physical and or psychological health. These women are hurting in all areas of their lives. The purpose of coming to a shelter is to escape domestic violence momentarily, as the violence often continues and escalates after the breakup. This is where women experience post-separation violence. Finding an adequate life for themselves and their children is a daily task, and they have to face major challenges. First of all, they have to relocate, move, and find a place to live. Quite a challenge when safety and financial capacity are important factors. The dynamics of conjugal violence impoverish women. They are in debt and have lost their jobs. One of the reasons why women are reluctant to leave their partners is the financial aspect. Often the spouse's income is the main income of the family, or their own income is not enough to support their family. Fear sets in, they feel trapped. Often these women have to take sick leave because of their situation, which leads them into a cycle of helplessness and vulnerability. Not only is finding adequate housing a challenge, but they have to refurnish and change schools for their children because they have moved to a different neighborhood, provide transportation and other expenses related to their situation, in addition to the challenges related to the custody of children and post-separation violence. Of course, the second stage houses can welcome nearly 500 women and children annually in the 34-member houses spread in the 14 regions of Quebec. Unfortunately, this is not sufficient to meet all demands. The need for safety for these women continues after their stay in the shelter. The women in our homes need safety, but also help and support in various areas of their lives. We are talking about taking back their power over their lives. In concrete terms, they need support in the steps they need to get their lives back on track for themselves and their children. These women are faced with misunderstandings about the domestic violence they experience in their respective environments and in their support networks. This is why we work with them and various stakeholders to highlight the consequences of domestic violence on them and their children. The training of partners is an essential factor in the implementation of safety nets for victims. It allows us to develop a common understanding of the problem and the consequences of this scourge on women and children, which we believe is essential. Domestic violence is a societal problem. All actors must collaborate in the implementation of safety measures for victims. We are pleased with the implementation of the crisis cell of the Carrefour Sécurité en Violence Conjugale in Chaudière-Appalaches, which allows us to focus on the safety of victims and prevent domestic homicides. Shelters alone cannot ensure the safety of victims. The contribution of partners is essential. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you so much. We're now going to do it to our first round. Everybody in our first round will be provided 6 hours, holy shnikes, 6 minutes for questions. We're going to turn the floor over to Dominique Bien. Dominique, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for all of those great opening remarks. It allows us to better understand intimate partner violence. My first question is for you, Mr. Jaffe. We unfortunately had to cut you off, but you were talking about a preventive kit for young people, which is very important for youth that are victims of domestic violence, and to prevent it from occurring again later in their lives, they need support. And what is a part of this kit that you mentioned earlier?
Thank you very much for that question. The first thing I should say, I circulated with the clerk a report we did for WAGE on all the prevention programs that we evaluated across Canada. So I recommend a review of that report. But the highlights are that we have unique opportunities to intervene with children who live with violence, but also with their peer group. The one thing I was going to highlight is we have a universal prevention program that's built into our school system. It's a universal prevention program. We call it the fourth R. The fourth R stands for healthy relationships. It's built into a 21 lesson plan into grade 9 health and physical education. It's now available in 5,000 schools across North America. It's translated into French and actually into Spanish. It's used in several U.S. States as well. And it's the program that doesn't require specialists to come to the school. You actually train teachers to deliver the program, and it meets every provincial and territorial curriculum expectation about what all students should be learning about healthy relationships. So it's been evaluated. We found just one study. We found that between grade 9 and grade 11, we reduced incidents of domestic violence by 50%, simply by students being involved in this program. So again, there's information in the material I gave the clerk, but I'd really encourage you to review it.
Parfait.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the material.
Vous avez raison. Merci.
You're right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffe. So we will certainly examine your proposals. Ms. Bernacci, welcome. We know you well. We know La Jonction pour Elle. We know all the great work that you do, your group, and all the other shelters in the region. You welcome women and their children. You talked about economic barriers that keep women from leaving a violent environment. What needs to be done to eliminate that barrier? What can we do? Answer. Sorry, I could hear myself. Women are the ones who tell us, and we can see it economically. It's difficult for them. When they come to a shelter, often they need to get social assistance. In order, we need to send letters saying that they are seeking shelter with us, but once they leave and they're in an apartment, they're not receiving support. They need to relocate, find an apartment, furnish the apartment, and they're not getting support. Often, it's peer support that would help them, or shelters or second stage shelters that will help them. I think that it would be important to focus on the assistance that the government could give those women financially. Somebody mentioned last week that often it's the women who leave. They force themselves to leave. They're victims and they end up having to leave, even with all the problems that leads to. And for their safety, they need to leave. And we know that it's for their safety and for the safety of the children that they leave. But it's very complicated afterwards to go home, even if the house is in their name. It's very complicated. Ms. Bernacci, you welcome children with their mothers. What do you say to the children with their trauma, and already staying at a shelter for women who were abused must be difficult for those children. Answer: we have youth workers who work with us, and we work with the mother, and we respect her limits, of course. Often, children think that they're in a hotel. It's big, they have friends, and children are often fairly, or rather, there's a lot of yelling because there's no violence and screaming, so they're able to enjoy it a bit more. And
now going to move the next. Sorry about that, Dominique. We're now going to move over for the next
Ça va,
6 minutes.
merci.
We'll pass the floor over to Sonia Sidhu. Sonia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses who are with us today, and thank you the work you're doing in the communities. So my first question is to Ms. Jashani. Ms. Jashani, I want to start with you. In your testimony, you spoke about the Family Justice Center model of providing services to the survivors of family violence in the same location at the Safe Center of Peel. Can you tell us more about some unique features of this model and how it's more effective?
Thank you for your question. So there are many unique features of the model that are based on survivors' feedback. Again, when victims come into the Safe Center, they have a safe place for their children. That is a child-friendly environment where there is a full-time childminder who supports the children in a place where they can play and be themselves while mummies get the information and the support that they need. So they don't have to bring their children into a counseling room and have to worry about what their children are going to hear. When people come into the Safe Center, they do one intake. They don't repeat their story over and over again. We have one file. And again, we work integratively with our partners so that we are all doing a risk assessment. We're all using the same risk assessment and therefore speaking the same language. So when one partner says this level of risk, the other partner understands exactly what that means. And what also happens at the Safe Center is we have glue positions. We have client navigators who are there to welcome and support our clients so that they don't have to navigate the system. The client navigators support our clients in accessing what resources they may need, when they need them, and how to get them into their lives. And one of the other most important features of the Safe Center is the ability to bring case conferences together very quickly and therefore to be able to respond to high-risk cases. Our recent integration with Peel Regional Police has added the additional factor of what women told us, is that when they wanted to talk to police, they did not want to sit in police stations and wait in a police station not knowing who's walking in the door, but to be in a safe, comfortable place where they had supports around them and be able to talk to police who are trained in the issue, who understand what IPV is and many of the barriers that they may be facing. And certainly Inspector Hewson can speak more about the work that we do with Peel Regional Police.
Thank you, Ms. Jashani. My next question is to Inspector Hewson. In your opening statement, you have mentioned that domestic and intimate partner violence is the number one reason for 911 calls in the Peel. We know that the Peel Police work closely with the service providers in our community to respond to the crisis. You also work with the CMHA Peel to respond to distress calls. Can you tell us how your officers are interacting with the survivors at the Safe Center of Peel? Do you think it's working with the Safe Center of Peel? There's a better outcome coming out of it?
Thank you for that question. Absolutely. We're having a lot of success now where we're hearing from survivors how they have had a better experience with the model, how we've changed it. So with how we decided to change our service delivery models embedded with our community safety and well-being framework. So we not just looking at just instant response, we're also looking at risk intervention, social development, and prevention. So we're employing those upstream approaches and services for those at risk. Where another big change for police officers is my whole unit is actually embedded within that community partner building. And for Peel Regional Police, that is a first to have a whole investigative unit, not in a police station, it's in a community partner building. That way we're right there with our community partners interacting. I have interview rooms that are built within the Safe Center so that that woman, the victim, never has to go into a police station, because we recognize that that's one of the barriers to reporting. So we're trying to look at different ways to break down those barriers and stop working in silos and working more together. So once we finish having, we conduct our investigation, we're able to, because we're in that same building, have that warm handoff to our community partners so they could get the supports that they need.
Some of your partners of the Safe Center Peel include cultural services organizations like Roots, Indus Community Services, which serve the Black and South Asian communities. Can you speak on that, how the culturally sensitive, we heard other testimony, they said, there's a stigma out there, and then mostly women, racialized women, and then they are not coming out. So what do you think, how they can come out, how we can break that stigma?
About 20 seconds to respond.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have partners, ethno-specific partners who work with various different communities. And what's really important is we're able to provide services in particular languages, but also with the cultural nuances. And we have the opportunity by integrating, really influencing our other system partners. So again, helping the police understand the cultural nuances, as well as the other needs the clients may have. One important feature is that the police on site are in plain clothes, and they are all trained in this area, which also helps in the handoff that may need to happen. And again, it's women's choice if they want to speak to the police. Not all women have to speak to the police. It is completely her choice.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over for the next 6 minutes to Adrienne Laroche. Adrienne, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. We know that this second panel is very dense, and your daily work on violence against women and intimate partner violence is admirable work. My first question is for Mr. Jaffe. We know that in order to put an end to the cycle of violence, we need to work upstream. A lot of people have said this to the committee. Coercive control is a precursor to physical violence. And we see the importance of recognizing coercive control. But we know that such a measure doesn't come with a magic wand. It's a tool, however, that can be added to other tools, for example, training for members of the judiciary, but also awareness of the public and support for women throughout the process. Do you believe that for all those reasons, it is important to recognize coercive control on the legislative plane to accompany training and all the other tools that have been mentioned?
Thank you for that question, and the answer is definitely yes. I mean, changing the law is useless if you don't back it up with education. I mean, it should be part of what every lawyer gets in law school, every social worker, psychologist gets as part of their training. And there should be a very active public education program. We don't do enough to educate the public. I've said previously that we should have a public service announcement about what coercive control is, what it looks like, how to identify it. You know, we should have it during the Stanley Cup playoffs. You know, we shouldn't just have a brochure in a doctor's office. It's got to be in front of us. Quebec is the only province that I've seen that actually has public service announcements defining violence in all its aspects as part of, I've seen it actually during Montreal Canadian hockey games. And I haven't seen it elsewhere. Anyway, I just use that as an example. We have to really invest in public education, take it seriously. I mean, I think we fall short. We have, I think, Katrina Scott testified earlier in your hearing, and she talked about amazing programs we have, Neighbors, Friends, and Family. It's available in multiple languages, but we're not getting it out far enough from coast to coast to coast. So I think we have to invest heavily in public education, because the front line, our neighbors, friends, family, coworkers, if they don't know, it's one less place that victims and potentially perpetrators can go for help and support.
Merci, Monsieur Jaffe. Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffe. And in Quebec, we have developed an expertise, and it's important to create behavioral change. But with the time that I have left to conclude this study, we're trying to find solutions to put an end to domestic violence. You talked about campaigns in Quebec, but in your view, what could the federal government do to counter domestic violence, knowing that its role is limited because it's of provincial competency? Do you have any knowledge of another country that we could look to? For example, Scotland, where the criminalization of coercive control takes into account the impacts of that on children. So I'd like to hear you talk about that. Are there any other models from other countries that could inspire us?
I'm inspired every day by Canada. We have all the answers within our reach. We have lots of model programs, some of which you've heard during the testimony. What we lack is better collaboration between the federal and provincial governments. I realize there are many things that are provincial government or territorial government jurisdictions, but I think the federal government can still play a leadership role in bringing people to the table, sharing resources. There's all kinds of great resources that need to be shared more broadly across the country. You know, there's innovative programs in Quebec that need to be shared with other provinces and territories. There's innovative programs. We've heard an excellent one out of Peel Region that are model, you know, throughout the country. So I think we have to do more to share and collaborate. I also think you make a very important point about just about children and exposure to violence. It's also exposure to coercive control. We have to get judges and lawyers to stop thinking that family violence is just physical. We have to understand it also includes emotional, psychological, financial, that it's coercive control, and children are harmed by exposure to coercive control. So we have to get the message out.
Donc l'importance aussi So the importance as well that the legislation and the criminal code follow certain initiatives that could happen in the provinces, or in Quebec, for example. There are special tribunals. There are also the e-bracelets. So these are measures, and there would need to be an alignment between what is going on in the provinces and at the federal level.
I agree. There's if I could suggest, there's some unique issues in Quebec and other provinces is when victims are coming forward talking about coercive control in family court, they're accused of turning the children against their partner, accused of alienation, and that is a serious concern. So there's many roadblocks victims face in Quebec and also in other jurisdictions.
Thank you so much. We're now going to pass the floor over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the witnesses today for your testimony. My first question is for Deputy Grand Chief Abenishiashkam, or Abenishiashkam. Is that, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I just want to start out by thanking you for your contributions to the pathways to safety for document. You know, since being in the House of Commons, I've been really trying to push for a more urgent response from the government around this very serious genocide. against Indigenous women and girls and diverse genders. One of the quotes in the report says, in quotes, the impact of the federal budget needs to be felt on the ground. There's more than 630 First Nations communities in Canada, 53 Inuit communities, in addition to Métis settlements across the country. Yet, in the report by Stats Canada in 2017-18, there's only 85 shelters for victims of abuse that had ties to First Nations, Métis, or Inuit communities or organizations. We know that Indigenous women, or 6 in 10 Indigenous women, have experienced physical or sexual abuse sometime at a certain point in their lifetime, which raises with the LGBTQI plus communities at 83%. You know, going back to the quote, the impact of the federal budget needs to be felt on the ground. You know, the National Inquiry was released in 2019. I'm not feeling the impact on the ground. The report also shares frustrations regarding the lack of sustainable funding that results in preventative actions and gaps created due to a lack of interjurisdictional cooperation. And this goes directly against Call to Justice 1.6 of the National Inquiry, which calls on all governments to eliminate jurisdictional gaps and neglect that result in improper or denial of services. And your report called on the federal government to take the lead in addressing these interjurisdictional issues and close the gaps. I think the lack of action is costing lives. I, in fact, know it's costing lives of Indigenous women and diverse gender peoples in my riding. I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Thank you very much. And I certainly would welcome any comments that my friend and colleague Julie may have. I live in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and I also have. I'm quite aware of the challenges that Indigenous women and girls face in terms of trying to find a safe place within their communities, many of them having to leave and go to urban centers, and at times face challenges there as well. So when we talk about that disparity and in terms of the funding that is provided to these organizations that provide service to the First Nation communities, there is quite a difference in terms of what they get, and also in terms of a very noticeable disparity in terms of infrastructure. And those are some of the things that we are trying to address, and there's many documents and evidence that supports that particular gap needs to be addressed. So Julie, I'm not sure if you want to add any more. English.
Just to say that as Ms. Kazan had said, it's been now 3 years since the release of the National Inquiry's final report. It's going to be a year since the release of the National Action Plan. And we have at the AFN, as Deputy Grand Chief spoke to, have been reaching out in the regions and meeting with families and survivors. That was very important to the Women's Council to do that. And what we hear from them is that they don't see the changes on the ground. They don't see the additional safe spaces in their communities. And we know in certain areas, especially in remote or rural areas, it is very difficult for Indigenous women to find safe spaces for them and their families. And we see the commitments, but we just don't see the change on the ground. And the advocacy of the AFN Women's Council certainly is that the implementation has to move faster, and it has to be something that is done collaboratively with families and survivors.
Thank you so much. Just building on that, like we have calls for justice that came out of the national inquiry. I know that former Chief Commissioner Marion Bullard called it a colossal failure in terms of the rollout. Many people have criticized the plan as having, a lot of voices, people who have gifted their stories of trauma without action, without timelines, without resources. And although the federal government has committed funds, it's not rolling out. How is the failure to move swiftly, especially with increased rates of violence that have occurred during the pandemic, creating an even greater crisis, rapidly increasing crisis?
We're going to have to get back to that answer. Sorry about that. I can hear myself. We're going to have to get back to that answer. Your time is up. What we're looking at is how many minutes is left in this meeting. Because we're a little late and we do have 4 panelists, we are able to go today till 6:45. So I'm going to extend this meeting for the additional 15 minutes so that we're able to get in the testimony that we need. I'm going to pass this over now to Michelle Ferrari. Michelle, you will have 5, and then Pam 5, Adrian and Leah, you'll both have 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Michelle for right now. Michelle, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and always a struggle to fit in such big questions in such big topics, but I'm going to do my best. Peter, very impressed with what you've said today. A lot of shaking heads in here, and I don't know that you could see it when you talked about public education in particular. One of the big things that I would love to see happen, and I'm curious in your thoughts, is to really go into the preventative end of things to stop the trauma cycles. And so when we look at kids who've been through extreme trauma, I'm curious what you believe, what interventions and treatments help children recover from such trauma.
Children need access to trauma counseling, and they're not getting very much. There's no universal programs across Canada. I mean, I work with children who are at the scenes of a domestic homicide, and it's fate or luck depending on where they were, and the follow-up with victim service to make sure they get any kind of appropriate counseling. So that would be a priority. To me, if you're a child living with domestic violence, you're at risk not only to repeat the cycle in the future, but you're at risk for serious emotional, behavioral, and cognitive problems. And those children should be getting help right away. So I think every community or every region needs to have access to specialized resources for children who are exposed to domestic violence. They're very much at risk, whether they're infants or teenagers. We know from the research that children are impacted across the different stages of development, and we continue to deny and minimize. It should be a standard form of what we deal with in healthcare. I mean, family doctors should be asking that question as part of their regular work with families. Pediatricians should be asking the question. So I think we need to build it into an action plan, but we need awareness. Children are ignored, and it makes me sad to see that repeatedly. In 2022, we still have to raise this issue.
I couldn't agree more. I want to shout out that from the rooftops. I think it's really interesting what you've said, because some kids maybe haven't been exposed to extreme trauma, and it's that gray area when we look at defining coercive control or being in a home that you didn't really know was not healthy. And kids don't know what they don't know because it's just what they're exposed to. Do you think it's going to be possible to clearly define coercive control so that we can put it into policy and law, because it can go down a gray area, especially as many people have seen, and we've seen throughout this study, victims in particular say, well, I don't have it that bad. Like, I'm not a victim of abuse. It's not me. And consequently, the children as well will learn, rationalizing irrational behavior. Do you think we can clearly define coercive control for law?
Yes, I think we can do a better job. I do acknowledge it's going to be challenging. I like what we have in the Divorce Act, and now it's a question of just educating people about what it means. I think we have to define it. For 20 years we've had something called a power and control wheel. It looks at different elements of abuse, and many police officers, victim services, shelters, counselors understand it. I just think we have to do a lot more to educate people what it looks like when somebody has so much control and domination over somebody else that it impacts their freedom and access to friends, family, healthcare. So I think it's possible. And again, each victim is going to have to find their own way to get help and also help for themselves. One example I'll use, I do think an important front line, we don't talk about our teachers. In our school board, we've done education with elementary and secondary teachers to be aware of the impact of domestic violence on children and what the warning signs are. So teachers may be the first line of defense to talk to children about the issues and also get help within the school district, but also within the community.
So great. And just to one more point, I think when we look at public education around what people deem as normal, as we try to change what we thought was normal behavior, it's normal for him to control, or women. That's not, this doesn't always happen just to women. He controls all the money or she controls all the money. Those things were normalized. What do you think is the most effective thing to unnormalize what was normalized for so many decades?
20 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I think it's probably, we have to give examples. I think we have to find every avenue possible, whether it's through public service announcements, whether it's through educating counselors, whether it's, I think ultimately it's to teenagers in high schools and dating relationships, making sure they understand what healthy relationships look like and what coercive control looks like. So I think it's got to be universal. It's not just to people living with violence, it's to their friends and neighbors and peer group.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over to Pam Demoff. Pam, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks so much, Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses. 5 minutes is such a short amount of time. My first question is actually for Safe Centre of Peel. I recently met with Safe Pets Ontario, and I wondered if you could talk about the role that inability to find a safe place for companion animals plays in women not being able to leave abusive relationships. The government provided Humane Society of Canada funding to work with shelters, but sometimes making a shelter pet-friendly isn't the answer. And I wonder if you're doing any of that at your organization. They talked about educating the police, about having people being able to go to hotels or finding safe foster homes for the animals. So I wonder if you could just talk about that briefly.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we certainly have seen women who find themselves in these circumstances where their pets are being threatened. First we see that the violence happens with pets in order to control her further and to create that toxic environment in the home. So, we certainly work with her around what are possible options. We do not, as of yet, have a dedicated pathway to, a humane society to get pets out and taken care of. But we certainly work with her around what her barriers and challenges may be and how we can best support to navigate. Inspector Hewson, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you covered it off. Yeah.
If you want to have a conversation about it, because it's a barrier to actually leaving before they are even able to leave the home. The second question, I come from Halton Region, and we have one of the highest rates of human trafficking, as I know Peel does as well. We did, in our plan to combat human trafficking, provide increased resources and capacity to police services, but I'm just wondering if you could talk about the connection between intimate partner violence and human trafficking and any recommendations on more the government could do to support you at Peel Police.
I think Shalina has a comment for that if you're going to talk about the Encourage Hub. Yeah, I thought so. I'll let Shalina.
Okay, and then I'll pass it over to you, Lisa.
For sure.
So thank you again for that question. And absolutely, many times we see women coming in to the Safe Center exhibiting signs of IPV. And as we work with her and dig in further, we actually do see signs of human trafficking. And so we begin to explore that. And so all of our partners are trained in that area as well, so that they know what they're looking for. But we're very blessed to have a regional strategy strategy in our community, where we have just opened our first human trafficking hub, a collaborative hub to respond to victims and survivors of human trafficking, where we work again closely with Victim Services, with Elizabeth Fry, Our Place Peel, and Peel Regional Police, in order to really be able to respond, get the trauma support that victims and survivors need. And certainly our colleagues at Peel Regional Police have done a tremendous job in leading a community-wide awareness building strategy around education and training the community. So parents, teachers, caregivers start to see the signs and are able to intervene early. Lisa?
I only have a minute. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's just quickly, I'll just build upon that. Like in addition to doing the prevention education to the community, at Peel, something we're embarking on within the next few weeks is providing training to all frontline officers with Tamiya Nagy to get those indicators so they can recognize signs and get to supporting those women and getting them the proper supports.
If you have any other recommendations for the federal government, please feel free to send them to us in writing, because we don't have a lot of time when we have this many witnesses. Dr. Jaffe, I know you talked about the importance of judicial education and the changes in the Divorce Act. I've been working with Jennifer Kagan to get a private member's bill passed, Kira's Law. I'm just wondering if you could quickly comment on the importance of that judicial education around domestic violence and coercive control. In about 10 seconds. Sorry.
10 seconds. Thank you for your leadership on that issue and picking up the torch from Jennifer Kagan. I do think judicial education is essential. Like I said recently, in 2022, you can't be a family court judge and not understand family violence and coercive control, period.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over for 2.5 minutes to Adrienne. Adrienne, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My questions for this last round will be for Ms. Tanguay, because there's something on your website that I noticed. You can have access to a test to find out if a partner is controlling, and you highlight different controlling behavior, economic and social control. Do you have a lot of cases of women who had to undergo or who were affected by that kind of violence, and what were the responses to that test? Can you hear me? Yes? So the test allows a woman to self-diagnose, because often they're going through domestic violence and they don't know what it is. They see domestic violence as physical violence, as being hit. So that test allows women to self-diagnose, and oftentimes they're quite taken aback, because in situations of domestic violence, the dynamic is such that a woman feels responsible for that violence. So it takes time for her to realize that she's not the problem. And coercive violence, well, the women that we meet in shelters say that it's always small things, that it's embarrassing to call it violence. But that's the dynamic of that kind of relationship. It's a bunch of small things that alone don't seem like much, but when you put it all together, you see that it is coercive control. It's by looking at the whole history, and that's how we see the dynamic. And this dynamic is very subtle, as you've said, but it always hurts. I think I only have a few seconds left, so thank you very much to our witnesses, and I would like to offer you my condolences. There was a second femicide in the community of Saint-Agathe-des-Monts, so my sympathies.
Thank you very much. We're now going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 2.5 minutes.
My question again for Deputy Grand Chief. One of the things that I've called for this time around with my private members, Bill C-223, is to implement a guaranteed livable basic income. That was in response actually to Call to Justice 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. Why is that call for justice so critical?
I think aside from that particular call and other calls which have fallen on deaf ears, it's sometimes very discouraging that we continue to try to raise our voice, and many times it falls on deaf ears. So, Julie, if you could just continue answering that particular question, please. I just have to plug in my computer here. Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Grand Chief. I think that the bigger issue in terms of, well, in terms of the intimate partner violence and violence against Indigenous women, we know the root causes are so much bigger than just, finding programs that work and so forth. Like it has to really deal with poverty, lack of housing, lack of infrastructure, lack of clean drinking water that our people have experienced for centuries, like in decades, I would say, in terms of lack of housing and inadequate infrastructure. So the fact that our families and our people have lived in poverty for so long and had no sort of way of ensuring safety in our communities, I mean, that all plays into a factor in terms of ensuring that people have guaranteed livable incomes and ensuring that our families and our women especially are lifted out of poverty and empowered in terms of regaining their roles within their communities. So it's all interconnected, and I'm sure everyone knows that, but the issues are quite larger than just looking at the programming within for women who are experiencing violence. It's much larger and interconnected, and obviously related to colonialism and systemic violence that our people experience.
Wow. Well, on behalf of everybody at the Status of Women, I would like to thank you all for coming out today. Thank you to the 4 different groups of witnesses that we've had. This is the end of our study. You are the last panel that we have, and we'll begin to start writing this report or starting drafting it in the near future. Thank you so much for being part of this meeting today and finally finishing it off for us. Reminder to all of the members, we will be having committee business starting on Friday, discussing a variety of different things as we move forward. I would like to say thank you to all you all, and let's get some good work done on behalf of all of the women across Canada. Thanks very much, everybody. I adjourn this meeting today.